Rise is definitely nearing its end of life. In fact, with Title Update 5, we got so many new features that boosted everyone's damage and skills to ridiculous levels. And everything is so much cheaper now, and you get so many more quest rewards. I think Capcom's just doing whatever they can to keep us playing this game until the launch of Monster Hunter 8. So as Rise winds down, yeah, I know, I understand. Even people on Xbox and PlayStation don't have Sunbreak yet. That's fine. You'll have it for several months before Monster Hunter 8 comes out. Capcom is definitely stringing us along, trying to keep us engaged with Monster Hunter until Monster Hunter 8 comes out. And it's pretty clear that there's not a lot more they're going to give us for Rise and Sunbreak. Once we reach that point, we always start speculating what's going to be in the next version of Monster Hunter. I have put quite a bit of thought into this. When you look back throughout the history of the Monster Hunter games, you can see some patterns start to emerge in terms of when they're going to launch, how much time in between titles, what platforms they're going to be on, what features you're going to see. And so this is what I've come up with. A year from now, we can find out how many of these I got right. Before I get started on mine, I want you to think about what you think is going to be in the next version of Monster Hunter, and just start typing it in a comment while you finish listening to this video. First thing that I think is going to happen with Monster Hunter 8, it's going to be a multi-platform release on day one. The Switch has proven that it can run a modern Monster Hunter title using the RE engine and make it look good too. So I think we're going to see it launch on Switch, Xbox, and PlayStation all at the same time, or at least within a week or two of each other. We might even see a PC release within a couple weeks of the console launch, but I wouldn't be surprised if the PC release was delayed. PC ports often require a lot more playtesting, simply because there's more hardware options out there that have to be tested and more bugs to be worked out. The game console platforms are usually pretty solid. They're pretty easy to target and test and debug. Second thing I think about Monster Hunter 8, I believe it's going to come out in the spring of 2024 at the earliest. So what does that mean? A year from now, basically. If you look at the history of Monster Hunter releases, you'll see the pattern. Considering Capcom released Rise to Xbox and PlayStation in January and Sunbreak very soon, probably by the time you're watching this video, it's already out. They'll be competing with themselves if they release a new Monster Hunter title within a year of that. Third thing I think about Monster Hunter 8, I will not be surprised when the next Monster Hunter game has underwater combat. You think underwater combat's too clunky? Well, yeah, the entirety of Monster Hunter used to be clunky. Whether you're fighting on land or underwater, it was very different from what it is today. When Tri came out and had the underwater combat, everything was clunky back then. It was a very different playstyle back then. But Capcom managed to make land-based combat unclunky, if you will, smooth, fast. They've even created aerial combat. All right. So they can do the same thing for underwater combat too, without question. So you might ask yourself, well, why bother with underwater combat? You know, if it's going to be just like being on land or whatever. Well, it's not going to be just like it. It's going to be different. You're going to be floating there. You're going to have not just 360 degree directionality, not just up and down, not just rising up into the air, but an entire, I don't even know what you'd call it, spherical movement. Every possible three-dimensional movement. No gravity. And the move sets, it's like adding a whole new set of moves for this whole new environment. And there's another reason why I think underwater combat is going to be with us, but it ties in with another point that I'm going to make a little bit later. Fourth thing I think about Monster Hunter 8, if we do get underwater combat, then obviously Lagiacrus will be there. People are talking, well, why isn't Lagiacrus in the game? You know, Lagiacrus on land sucks. When they gave us Lagiacrus but didn't allow us to swim, it was kind of a stupid fight. There's a lot of talk about that, and I kind of agree with that. I think Lagiacrus definitely shines best underwater. If we do get the underwater combat, he's coming back for sure. And Abyssal Lagiacrus is going to be there too. And if you've never fought Abyssal Lagiacrus, you're in for a big surprise. Fifth, number 5, we're going to see a new weapon. Capcom almost has to give us one. It will have been almost a decade without a new weapon added to the mix. I know they aren't sitting on their hands over their headquarters. They've got something planned for this. I'm sure of it. Don't be shocked when it turns out to be a trident and has amazing underwater handling abilities. Seriously though, trident would be awesome. Sixth, item on my list. Spearbirds will be gone. Yep, I love spearbirds. Okay, I don't love spearbirds, but I'm okay with spearbirds. I don't have a problem with them. I've made like 4 videos on spearbirds explaining why it's actually a pretty cool feature, but there's always pushback. There's always so many people who just can't deal with it. Usually those are people who like to warp immediately to the monster and just make Monster Hunter purely boss rush. They don't want to gather. They don't want to explore the map. They don't want to take advantage of the different environments. They don't want to just experience the beauty and wonder of the world itself. They want to jump right in and go hand to hand with the giant creature. And that's fine. That's not what Monster Hunter is, but that's fine. If you want that, go play that style. That's fine. But I don't think Capcom's going to bring spearbirds back. Not because all you guys are bitching about it, but because spearbirds work for Rise. They are part of the design philosophy of what they wanted Rise to be. And I don't think Monster Hunter 8 is going to have that same design philosophy. I believe they have much different goals for what they want Monster Hunter 8 to be and what they're creating. And so spearbirds are not going to fit into what I think they're trying to do with Monster Hunter 8. So all that said, gathering will still be a core game mechanic like it always has been. For people who just hate spearbirds and hate running around grabbing things, sorry guys, gathering is a core Monster Hunter mechanic. It is fundamental to what the developers think any Monster Hunter game should be. So it's still going to be there. All right. You're still going to have to pick things up off the ground. So if doing that really triggers you, you probably are in the wrong game genre. So definitely going to be a lot of gathering. There's going to be a big emphasis on combining, almost crafting, not like Minecraft level, but I think they're going to pay special attention to the benefits that can be had from gathering items and combining items into things that are more powerful. Because I feel that that's been neglected over the past probably 3 iterations of the game. So I think there's going to be a return to that. Number 7, we've had buddies for a long time now. They haven't always been cats, and we got our dogs. We recently got the ability to ride a giant dog. That's pretty amazing. We've been wanting that for years now. We even got the ability to ride and control the monsters themselves. We've been asking for that for years now too. And what's the next logical step here? Obviously, flying mounts. It's the only possible answer. How else can you improve the buddy system or the mount system or the wyvern riding system? We need flying mounts. Aerial combat itself isn't going to go away. In fact, in World, we actually had aerial mounts. Do you remember that? It was a very limited situation, but you could latch on to those Remobra, whatever those things are called, and you could kind of steer them around and go from place to place. You had to use them to access a couple of hidden map locations. I think they were part of the storyline in a couple places. While I don't think it's going to work like it did in World, I do believe we're going to have a mount that gets you up in the air and gets you traveling distances without having to walk all the way, and also allows you to access higher places rather than having to wire bug up there or using those great wire bugs. So I'm pretty certain we're going to see flying mounts in Monster Hunter 8. What's next? Number 8, seasons and weather patterns. Yeah, we actually had seasonal type stuff in previous Monster Hunter games. I personally haven't played any of those versions, but they did exist. I believe Monster Hunter 2 and at least one other version, and I believe Frontier had seasonal type stuff. So I think we're going to see a return to that, and I think it's going to make a big difference in terms of what the environments look like at any given point and what items are available to gather, perhaps even what monsters are available in which locations. There's a lot of things you can do with seasons and weather patterns other than just, oh, wow, it's snowing outside. So I think that's going to be a big thing too. And so all of these things that I've talked about so far point toward what I believe the design philosophy is going to be for Monster Hunter 8. The final thing I have on my list really brings it all together. I believe Monster Hunter 8 is going to give us, although this is something I personally really, really want to see, I think it's also the next logical step for the series. It does have a precedent in Monster Hunter World too. I think they're going to give us one huge map. Yeah, remember the Guiding Lands? Remember that? That was Capcom's little experiment in the one big map concept. All the different biomes tied together in one map. Monster Hunter 8 we'll have something on a much, much larger scale, and it will be breathtaking. So now you can see why I think we're going to have underwater and why that fits with the theme, because why would you want to explore this giant world and not be able to go in the water? I think that would be silly. And why flying mounts will be very advantageous, why gathering will be a big deal. It's like you're thrown out into the wilderness and you have to fend for yourself. Of course, there's going to be towns. What I think would be really, really cool, and what I hope they do, is to integrate the villages into the map, instead of having it as just, we're just loading into a new area, a new screen, integrating the villages into the map. So as you're riding down the trail, down the mountain, you can see the village in the distance, and you can just walk right through the gates to the village and interact with everyone right there. That would be amazing. And so if they do give us one big map, I think that makes sense for them to do that. And with this one big map concept, now, if you don't understand what I mean by that, what I mean is just take Breath of the Wild as an example. People call these open world games or whatever. I think open world is the wrong phrase, the wrong term for this. Open world implies that you get to control your own fate. You get to decide what you do and when. So Breath of the Wild is definitely open world. You don't have to do things in a certain order in Breath of the Wild. But with a Monster Hunter game, it doesn't make a lot of sense to do it that way. You have to build up your character. You have to go through low rank to high rank and then to master rank. I don't think they're going to get rid of that aspect of Monster Hunter. So in terms of open world, I think they're still going to hold our hand through the ranking process and through the quest completion process. So I'm not going to say open world, but one big map. So if you look at Breath of the Wild, it's one big map. You can go anywhere you want. And what is so similar to Monster Hunter Rise is that you can climb anything. In Rise, you can climb almost anything. So it is very similar to Breath of the Wild in that respect. And I think they're going to retain that. I don't think it's going to be like World where you see something really cool in the distance, but you just hit this invisible wall and you can't interact with it. Monster Hunter 8 is going to retain that climbing aspect that Rise has, that idea where you don't feel like you're in a little box and you just get to look at all the pretty things, but you don't get to climb on them or jump over them or decide which way you want to go. You know, the map isn't going to force you to go a certain way. And so now with one big map, you might be thinking, well, where do the monsters show up? And this is where the game can get really interesting, because the monsters can have ranges. They can have a home base. They can have a lair. They can have like a nest, and they can have a range which they travel in. No, you don't have to load them all at the same time. We have monsters coming and going all the time in Rise, and you could have a similar situation even though you do have one big map. After you defeat one monster, a few minutes go by, 10 minutes go by, and then another monster loads according to some algorithm into a randomized location, has a particular range that it'll travel in. Now think about this. If you have seasonal weather patterns where the snow comes down off the mountains every so often, the ranges, say Barioth range, now extends out further. And so if the village gets snowed in, then the Barioth are coming down and getting closer to the villages and threatening people there and creating new quests. We were having a conversation on the Discord the other day about, is it canon for you to repeat quests over and over that you've already completed? While I believe that it is, and then everyone else I think was on the other side of that, this situation, a scenario like this where you have one big map, seasonal weather patterns, would give you a context for repeatedly doing a quest over and over, or not necessarily repeating the same quest, but seeing the same or similar quest appear again and again. So this season, you've got 5 different people asking you to get rid of that pesky Barioth. And then the next winter season, they come back and ask you for basically the same thing. Even if they're different NPCs or different names or whatever, it's essentially you doing the same quest over and over again. And now there's a context for it that makes sense within the story and within the game itself. So integrating the villages into the big map, I think that they'll probably fake it. I think technologically it makes more sense to, once you pass through the gate, now you're walking around in the village. So there might be some loading going on behind the scenes. So whether or not we see the villages integrated into that big map, I don't think it's that important, just as long as you get to walk through the gate and then now you're in the town, and then you can walk through the gate on the other side of town and it just takes you right out to the next part of the map. We did see this in older versions of Monster Hunter where the Moga Woods was right outside the village. The village was on the D Island map. So you walk through the gates and now you're right there on the map. So that was kind of cool. There was a loading screen. So, but with modern hardware, they can probably get rid of that loading screen and make it feel more seamless. Honestly, this list is probably 50%, okay, let's say 60% what I'd like to see Monster Hunter become, but it's also, I think, the next logical step for the game because the hardware is so good now. You know, everybody's got solid state drives, and so load times aren't an issue, shouldn't be an issue anymore. And the hardware is so powerful now that Capcom should feel like they have the freedom to create whatever kind of thing they want. Now, again, I'm going back to Breath of the Wild. Nintendo made Breath of the Wild for the Switch. And while it does have some places where performance kind of tanks a little bit, overall, it's a great game. Visually, just in terms of what it accomplishes technologically, and it's performing on the Switch hardware. Now, Capcom got a game like Rise to perform really well on the Switch hardware. And it's just one more step from what they already have now to expanding or just interconnecting all the maps and making it freaking huge. And they will have had several years of working with RE Engine on the Switch. I don't think that's going to limit the feature set that they decide to put in the game. There it is. That's half my vision for Monster Hunter and half what I really think we're going to see anyway. I could be completely wrong on this. Capcom could have completely different vision for what Monster Hunter 8 is going to be. I don't think they do. I think they're going all in on this next title. I don't think they're going to take any shortcuts. I don't think they're going to just put something out there fast and quick, more of the same crap. I think they're going to make a big, bold move. They took a chance with Monster Hunter World and it paid off in a big way. And Rise is just as successful. And so I think we're going to see another big deal come out next spring. Fortunately, the people who create Monster Hunter aren't just churning out the same stuff year after year. We get lots of cool revisions, lots of cool changes. Everything just feels brand new, every new version of this game. So I think we can expect more great things. That's Monster Hunter 8. What do you think we're going to see on Monster Hunter 8? When do you think we will see Monster Hunter 8? What do you call it? Do you still call it Monster Hunter 6? Do you call it 7? Do you call it Monster Hunter 2024? Do you call it Monster Hunter Awesome? Monster Hunter of the Wild? Do you want to see underwater combat come back? Do you want seasons and weather patterns? Do you want the spirit birds? Do you want more gathering? Do you want less gathering? Which new weapon do you want them to put in the game? Do you want them to bring back an older weapon that we haven't seen in a long time and that none of us really have access to, like magnet spikes? Let me know in the comments. Subscribe to the channel, like the video, and I will see you in the next one.